The German scout car rolled confidently through the frozen forest, its engine humming like a predator certain of its kill. The soldiers inside laughed, unaware they were seconds away from vanishing in a roar of metal and fire. Beneath their wheels lay a crude device, nothing more than an old rusted shovel, a frayed wire, and a tin of stolen explosives. Command had rejected it, calling it a childish death trap. But the man who built it, a quiet, Polish farm boy named Marek, trusted what he knew. Simple tools, simple truths, and the land beneath his feet. When the shovel flipped upright, tension snapped, and the forest erupted. By dawn, Marek's band invention had changed everything. Marek Kowalski had never planned to become a resistance fighter for the war. He was a quiet 17-year-old who spent his days repairing fences, mending tools, listening to his father explain how the soil remembers every footstep. But when the Germans rolled into his village, burning homes and dragging men into trucks, Marek's world shrank into cold fear and a single promise: never let them take his land without a fight. He joined a small underground unit hidden deep in the January forest. They were underarmed, undertrained, and constantly hunted. Their commander, Captain Sobel, was a stern veteran who believed in discipline, rules, and textbook tactics. Marek, on the other hand, believed in whatever worked. He was clever with tools, quick with ideas, and fearless enough to try things others dismissed. That made him valuable, but also a problem. One night, while digging shallow pits for anti-vehicle traps, Marek spotted a broken shovel lying near an abandoned shed. Its handle was cracked, its blade rusted, but something about its shape sparked an idea. He studied the balance, the weight, the swing. Then, he imagined it as a lever one that could yank a tripwire with enough force to trigger an explosive charge the instant a vehicle passed. He built a prototype by lantern light, a rusted shovel half buried in frozen soil, wired to a tin of stolen blasting powder. When he presented it at the morning briefing, some fighters chuckled. Sobel didn't. He slammed his hand on the table and ordered Marek never to deploy that farmyard toy. Marek nodded respectfully, but inside, something hardened. He didn't build the shovel trap to impress anyone. He built it because they were running out of weapons, out of options, and out of time. For the next 3 days, the tension between Marek and Captain Sobel grew heavier than the winter fog settling over the forest. The resistance unit situation worsened with each sunrise. German patrols doubled. Supply lines fell apart. Their last box of grenades was gone. Their rifles rattled when fired, and the icy wind cut straight through their thin coats. The worst of all, the enemy had begun using fast-moving scout cars to sweep the woods. These vehicles weren't just armored, they were relentless. They carried radios, machine guns, soldiers who were eager to hunt down anyone hiding in the trees. Each evening, the unit gathered around a tiny fire to plan routes, ration food, and decide who would scout or who would sleep. Marek sat quietly among them, but inside his mind, gears were turning. He kept replaying the argument with Sobel. He wasn't angry. He was frustrated. A simple farm trick could stop a machine worth thousands of marks. Why couldn't the captain see that? Lana? Fourth morning, a breathless messenger burst into camp. Scout car spotted, he gasped. Coming this way, fast. Captain Sobel barked orders immediately. Fall back to the ridge. No direct engagement. Avoid being cornered. The unit sprang into motion, grabbing rifles and maps, but Marek's heart hammered. Falling back wasn't going to help them anymore. The scout car would sweep the ridge, report their position, and bring reinforcements. If they didn't stop it now, they would be hunted again tomorrow and the next day, until they froze or starved. As the fighters retreated through the snow, Marek slipped to the side, crouching behind a thick pine tree. He reached into his coat and pulled out the wrapped bundle he'd been hiding. His band's shovel trap. The wooden handle was repaired with rope and resin. The rusted blade was sharpened just enough to bite into frozen soil. The tripwire coil was neatly tied, ready to stretch across a narrow path the scout car was guaranteed to take. He knew if Sobel spotted him, he'd be dragged back to the group. He also knew that if he did nothing, the entire resistance cell might be wiped out. Marek sprinted downhill, boots crunching through snow, found a tight choke point and natural bottleneck, where two large boulders forced any vehicle to slow, was perfect. He dug fast, ignoring the cold that numbed his fingers. He jammed the shovel into the ground, half-buried it at an angle, and attached the tripwire to its handle. Then he crawled forward across the path, stringing the wire low, just above the snow crust. Finally, he set the explosive tin under a hump of earth, packing snow around it to dull the shine. The trap was ready in 5 minutes. The scout car roared in the distance. Marek dove behind a fallen tree and pressed his cheek into the freezing bark. Snowflakes dusted his hair as he steadied his breath. His heart pounded in his ears, louder than the engine. The vehicle appeared between the pines, gray, armored, confident. Its headlights cut through the ghostly mist. Inside, 2 German soldiers laughed as they smoked. They weren't worried. They never were. The scout car rolled over the tight path, tires crunching slowly. Then the right wheel hit the tripwire. The shovel snapped upright like a striking animal, jerking the wire with brutal precision. The explosive tin detonated with a sharp blast, small but fierce, right beneath the engine compartment. The front of the scout car lurched upward. A bright flash tore through the snow. Metal shrieked, gears shattered, and a fireball burst from beneath the vehicle. The laughter inside turned instantly to screams. Marek watched the flames rise. His farmyard toy had stopped a machine the entire unit feared. The explosion echoed through the forest like a thunderclap, sending birds scattering into the pale winter sky. Marek stayed frozen behind the fallen tree, breath held tight in his chest. He expected the scout car to keep rolling, maybe to limp forward on pure momentum. But it didn't. It sat at a violent angle, its hood crumpled upward, engine coughing smoke. Flames flickered around the shattered wheel well, eating at the metal like hungry teeth. The 2 German soldiers inside were stunned, shouting over each other. In panic, one soldier tried to climb out of the top hatch, coughing violently as black smoke poured around him. The others struggled with the jammed side door, cursing loudly. Marek knew they wouldn't stay confused for long. If they got their bearings, if they radioed for help, if they fired blindly into the trees, they could still wipe out the entire resistance unit. Marek didn't wait. He darted from his hiding spot, sprinting across the snow toward the wrecked vehicle. The heat radiating from the flames stung his face as he closed the distance. He wasn't a trained soldier. He didn't have a perfect plan. But he had speed, fear, just enough courage to outrun hesitation. The soldier climbing out of the hatch finally pulled himself free. His boots clanged against the metal roof as he stood up, gasping for air. He didn't even see Marek until it was too late. Marek grabbed a fist-sized rock from the ground and slammed it into the man's wrist, knocking the pistol free. It skidded across the snow. The German howled, drawing back, but Marek shoved him with all his strength. The man fell backward off the roof, hitting the ground with a heavy thud. The second soldier finally forced the side door open. He leaped out with a rifle raised. Marek ducked instinctively, feeling the cold wind from the barrel swing. The soldier shouted something, but Marek was already moving, diving behind the burning wheel well. A blast of heat washed over him, but he gritted his teeth and rolled to the other side. The soldier fired bullets slicing into the snow, where Marek had just been. The scout car crackled louder. Its flames spread from the engine toward the crates inside. Marek spotted the radio box through the open door. If that survived, the Germans could call reinforcements the moment they regained control. He couldn't let that happen. The second soldier kicked at the snow, searching for Marek. The first soldier groaned somewhere behind the vehicle, struggling to get up. Marek's eyes locked onto the pistol lying several steps away, half buried in powdery snow. He pushed off with both feet, lunged, and grabbed it. He had never fired a German handgun before. He didn't trust his aim. He didn't need accuracy. He needed distraction. He fired 2 quick shots toward the second soldier's boots. Snow erupted upward, forcing the man to shuffle back. Marek seized the moment, rolling to his feet and dashing toward the open door of the scout car. Inside, the heat was suffocating. The radio sparked wildly, wires melting. Marek didn't hesitate. He smashed it with the pistol grip until the metal bent inward and the glass shattered. Sparks popped like tiny fireworks stopped behind him. The second soldier roared and charged. Marek spun around just as the man tackled him, knocking them both into the snow. The rifle fell from the soldier's hands and slid away. Tease struggled fiercely, rolling through the icy slush. The man's weight pressed heavily on Marek's chest. The soldier swung a fist, grazing Marek's cheek. Marek kicked upward, forcing the man off balance. They separated for a second, just enough for Marek to raise the pistol again. He didn't have to shoot. A sudden burst of flame from the scout car's engine roared outward, forcing the soldier to shield his face. Marek scrambled away, gasping, as the fire intensified behind them. The explosion had damaged ammunition boxes inside the vehicle. If they cooked off, the entire car would erupt again, and then Marek heard polished voices shouting his name, Captain. Sobel and 3 resistance fighters appeared between the pines. Rifles raised, expressions full of shock and disbelief as they saw the destroyed scout car and the chaos around it. For a moment, everything froze, the drifting smoke, the crackling flames, even the winter wind seemed to pause as Captain Sobel stared at the burning scout car. His eyes moved from the wreckage to the 2 injured German soldiers crawling weakly in the snow. And finally to Marek, standing breathless with soot on his face and a pistol shaking in his hand. It was the kind of sight no commander expected to witness. A single farm boy bringing down an armored vehicle with nothing more than scrap metal, rope, and sheer determination. Sobel lowered his rifle slowly, disbelief tightening the lines on his face. Kowalski, what did you do? Before Marek could answer, the scout car groaned loudly. A deeper fire had caught the ammunition crate inside. Crackling intensified. Everyone instinctively stepped back. A secondary explosion rattled the clearing, sending a plume of flame into the sky. The 2 German soldiers cried out, scrambling farther away, dropping their weapons as they fled into the trees. Sobel's men fired warning shots to keep them moving, but didn't pursue. Their priority was the wreckage and the boy who caused it. The blast threw Marek onto one knee. Sobel rushed forward, grabbing him by the shoulders and pulling him upright. Are you hurt? He demanded. Marek shook his head, though his ears rang and his hands trembled. I'm fine, he managed. It worked. Sobel looked back at the demolished armored car, its once powerful engine, now a smoking crater. His jaw tightened not with anger, but with the weight of realization. You disobeyed a direct order, he said quietly. Marek's heart sank. For a moment, the victory felt like it was slipping through his fingers. Sir, if I didn't? If we let it pass, they would have found the ridge. It would come back with more. We needed something to stop them. Sobel didn't respond immediately. Instead, he stepped closer to the wreckage, examining the splintered shovel handle half buried. In the snow, the frayed tripwire still stretched across the path, the mangled remains of Marek's improvised explosive tin. One of the older fighters, Henrik, whistled softly. A shovel did this? Just a bloody shovel? It's not the shovel, another murmured. It's the boy who said it. Sobel exhaled slowly, the frost from his breath mingling with the smoke. He turned back to Marek, and this time his expression had changed. The hard edge in his eyes softened, replaced by something closer to respect, reluctant, but real. You're reckless, Sobel said. You act alone. You take risks that could kill you, and you don't follow orders. Marek lowered his gaze. Snowflakes clung to his eyelashes. But, Sobel continued, you also saved every one of us. Marek looked up. The captain stepped closer, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. Your idea was unconventional, crude, and against regulation. But it worked. And right now, that's worth more than any textbook. A wave of relief washed through Marek, though he didn't let it reach his face. Sobel wasn't done. That means from this moment forward, Sobel said, anything you create, any trap you design, you bring it to me first. If it's effective, we use it. If it's too dangerous, we refine it. But you don't act alone again. Understood? Marek nodded. Yes, Sir. Sobel gestured for the men to gather. Everyone, listen. The fighters moved closer, forming a semicircle around the burning scout car. Their faces were weary, yet there was a spark among them. Now something. Merrick had not seen in weeks. "Hope this boy just halted a German scout car with farm tools and frozen soil," Sobel announced. "If that doesn't tell you what we're capable of, nothing will." The men murmured in agreement. Even Henrik gave a rare grin, slapping Merrick on the back. For the first time, Merrick felt like more than the youngest fighter. He felt like someone the unit could depend on, but deep in the forest. A distant rumble vibrated through the trees, a sound Merrick and Sobel recognized instantly. Another vehicle, and this time it was much heavier. The rumble of the approaching German vehicles shook the frozen ground beneath their boots. Merrick's chest tightened as he scanned the road. He could see the faint outline of a half-track emerging from the fog, its headlights dim in the early morning light. It was heavier than the scout car, its armor thick, and its crew far more experienced. This was no ordinary patrol, it was a response to the earlier destruction. Sobel quickly gathered the men. "Positions. Use the terrain. Keep low, Marek." "The wire can? You set it up again?" Marek swallowed hard. His hands still shook from the adrenaline of the first encounter, but there was no hesitation. Sprinted toward the prepared spot, grabbing the remaining coil of wire. He found 2 fallen branches, slightly thicker than the shovels, and dug them into the snow with trembling fingers. Sweat mixed with the freezing mud as he stretched the wire taut, measuring it against the expected axle height of the half-track. He buried it just enough to be invisible in the thin fog, yet strong enough to catch the front wheels. The resistance fighters took cover behind. Rocks and trees, rifles poised. Sobel's voice cut through the tension, steady and commanding. "Huh? Mark. Wait until they're directly above the wire." Merrick crouched low, holding his breath. The half-track rolled forward slowly, scanning for ambushes. Its wheels crunched against the snow-covered dirt road, and Marek felt his pulse hammer in his ears. At exactly the right moment, he gave the subtle nod to Sobel. The front axle of the half-track caught the wire. The vehicle jolted violently, metal, screeching as it tried to compensate for the sudden obstruction. Sparks flew as the wire wrapped around the axle, spinning and tearing at the undercarriage. The half-track lurched, skidded sideways, and finally collided with a snowbank, wheels spinning uselessly. Smoke rose from the engine compartment. The soldiers inside were thrown off balance, scrambling to regain control. Marek didn't hesitate. He ran forward again, this time carrying a small, makeshift pole with another length of wire. The men behind him provided covering fire, forcing the half-track's crew to duck and scramble. It was chaos, but it worked. The vehicle was immobilized without a single fatality. Sobel moved up alongside Marek, watching the aftermath. "That's it," he said quietly, almost in disbelief. "They can't advance." He gestured to the resistance fighters. "Check the prisoners, secure the vehicle. Everyone, regroup." The impact of the first successful tripwire had been significant. But this confirmed something far more important. Strategy didn't always require superior numbers or advanced weapons. Improvisation, courage, and understanding of the terrain could level the playing field. The morale boost was immediate. The men had feared these patrols for weeks, losing comrades and feeling powerless. Now, they saw a path forward, one that relied on their ingenuity and determination. Merrick's mind replayed the sequence of events. The wire, the shovels, the cold and mud, they were all small, almost insignificant details, yet together, they all had created a solution that neutralized a heavily armed threat without unnecessary casualties. It was simple, effective, and deadly in its precision. As the men regrouped, Sobel approached Marek once more. "You've done more than anyone could have imagined. But remember, the true measure isn't in destroying vehicles. It's in saving lives." Marek nodded, the weight of the moment settling in. He realized that what he had done would ripple beyond the battlefield. His improvisation had given them an advantage, one that would reduce the toll of enemy reconnaissance, protect civilians in the villages nearby, preserve the lives of every fighter willing to follow his lead. That day, the tripwire method became more than a desperate act, it became a lesson in ingenuity, courage, and the power of taking initiative in the face of impossible odds. Word spread quietly through the unit, whispered among soldiers who understood its value. No official orders sanctioned it. no medals, would come. Yet its impact was undeniable. The scout cars would think twice before rolling through their territory. Again, and Marek. He felt a quiet sense of accomplishment, knowing that even in the chaos of war, a single idea could change the outcome. Days passed. The tension along the ridge remained high. Marek's tripwire method had successfully neutralized. 2 more scout cars, and the men were beginning to whisper about the young fighter whose ingenuity had turned the tide. But the Germans were learning, adapting. Reconnaissance patrols became more cautious. Armored vehicles moved in tighter formations, and heavier support accompanied every scout mission. The thrill of victory was now shadowed by the looming threat of a counterattack. One morning, just before dawn, Sobel called a quick briefing. The snow had begun to melt, revealing patches of dirt and mud. "They've noticed something," he said, voice low. The last 2 patrols were delayed, cautious. "The enemy is adapting, Marek. We need another setup. This one will have to be bigger, riskier." Marek's stomach tightened. Risky wasn't new, but the stakes were higher. This time, the road they had chosen was narrower, flanked by rocky embankments, making it more difficult to place the wire without being seen. Marek's mind raced. With possibilities, he had to account for weight, momentum, and the angle at which the enemy vehicles would approach. He grabbed a longer coil of rusted wire, 3 shovels, and even a few broken planks scavenged from a nearby barn by midnight. Marek was crawling along the road, every sense alert. The wind whistled through the trees, carrying with it the faint scent of smoke from distant artillery strikes. He placed the first shovel carefully, angling it against the embankment, and then positioned the second and third. The wire stretched, taut, anchored with precision to catch the next approaching vehicle's axles perfectly. He tested it by tugging with all his strength, ensuring it would hold. Every detail mattered. One mistake could alert the Germans, or, worse, injure his own men. Sobel's men watched from the shadows, rifles ready, but silent, trusting Marek's judgment. "Ready?" Sobel whispered. Marek gave a slight nod, crouched low, and waited. Hours passed. Then, faint at first, the engine's growl echoed through the valley. Marek's heart leaped. The half-track rounded the bend, moving cautiously, lights dimmed. The wire hummed under tension, invisible in the darkness. Marek's hands gripped the snow-covered earth as the vehicle's front axle caught the wire. The half-track lurched violently. Its momentum caused the vehicle to tilt, then roll, metal grinding against rock and snow. The engine died mid-roll, smoke rising in spirals. Inside, the crew scrambled, panic on their faces as the vehicle landed hard on its side. Marek and Sobel's men surged forward, securing the enemy soldiers and checking for survivors. Amazingly, no one was fatally injured. The adrenaline rush was instantaneous. Sobel slapped Marek on the back. "You did it again," he shouted over the ringing silence of the forest. The men erupted with quiet cheers, a mix of relief and awe. Marek's mind raced not with pride, but with the weight of responsibility. Each success brought them closer to safety, yet the danger was far from over. From the German side, chaos reigned. Lieutenant Richter cursed under his breath as he surveyed the carnage. The half-track, a crucial vehicle for reconnaissance, was destroyed. The patrol was thrown into disarray, forcing the Germans to delay operations and rethink their strategy. The ripple effect Marek had created was undeniable. Enemy reconnaissance slowed. Artillery strikes decreased, and the American positions remained secure. Marek finally allowed himself a deep breath, glanced at Sobel, whose eyes reflected a mixture of pride and concern. "Proven something," Sobel said quietly. "One idea executed perfectly can change the battlefield." As the soldiers cleaned up the site and secured the prisoners, Marek knew that what they had done would echo beyond this ridge. The tripwire method, born from desperation, risk, and ingenuity, was now a weapon of survival. And while recognition might never come from higher command, every life saved was a testament to the courage and creativity of a single soldier willing to act, when the rules said he shouldn't. The German forces were unsettled. Reconnaissance that had once moved with impunity now proceeded cautiously, glancing at every road, every shadow, every crack in the terrain. Merrick knew that their success with the tripwire had not only stopped scout cars, but had begun to instill fear in the enemy. Yet with that fear came adaptation. The Germans were smart. They would not remain blind for long. Sobel gathered the men in the early hours, their breath visible in the frost-laden air. They're coming smarter, faster, and in groups. We need to be smarter, faster, and more creative. Marek, your tripwire isn't just a trap, it's a symbol. It shows them they cannot move freely. Need more? Spread out, unpredictable. Marek nodded, a mix of resolve and apprehension tightening his chest. He understood the stakes. Last 2 successful flips had emboldened the unit. But the enemy would study the aftermath, analyzing the crushed half-tracks, the captured soldiers, the patterns. Any mistake now could cost lives by nightfall. Merrick and a small team moved silently through the forest toward a road rarely used, but strategically crucial. The snow had melted, leaving slick mud and exposed roots. Every step was a calculated risk, each sound magnified in the quiet. Merrick placed the shovels carefully, this time improvising with jagged rocks as additional anchors, ensuring the wire could withstand heavier vehicles while remaining concealed. Every measurement, every knot, every tension adjustment had to be perfect. Failure was not an option. As the team retreated to cover, Merrick's eyes never left the road. The fog rolled in low, providing cover but also obscuring the enemy's movements. Hours passed in tense silence. Then, faint at first, the telltale growl of engines 2 vehicles approaching, traveling faster than expected. Merrick's pulse quickened. The first scout car hit the wire. The axle caught immediately, and the vehicle lurched violently, flipping and sliding into a ditch. Marek felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, but forced himself to stay calm. The second vehicle followed closely, unaware of the first trap. It struck the wire with a sickening crunch. Both vehicles were now disabled, smoke and mud filling the air. The resistance fighters erupted, rushing forward to secure the prisoners. Sobel shouted commands, moving efficiently, while Merrick inspected the damage. The enemy crew looked bewildered, their confidence shattered. Merrick's mind raced. This was more than just another victory. It was proof that ingenuity could overcome superior numbers, that the smallest intervention could create the largest ripple effect. But Marek also knew the risks. Word would inevitably reach higher command. Reports might mention these anomalies. The unexpected destruction, the accidents that stopped patrols in their tracks. Marek's heart sank at the thought of being reprimanded, of being forced to justify actions that, by all doctrine, were forbidden. Yet he also understood a critical truth. Some rules existed only to constrain, not to protect. And in this moment, the rules could not save lives. Only action could. As dawn broke, Merrick and Sobel gathered the men. The forest echoed with quiet triumph. "Today we've done more than fight," Sobel said. "We've taught them that even the smallest measure, when executed with courage and intelligence, can shift the balance." Marek allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. Each tripwire, each flip, each immobilized vehicle was a testament to human ingenuity, determination, and the willingness to risk everything for the lives of others. The war was far from over, but for the first time in weeks, the unit felt in control. Armed not with superior firepower, but with strategy, creativity, relentless courage. The story of the tripwire would spread quietly among the soldiers. Whispered in the night, shared with newcomers, taught in secret by those who understood its power. Recognition from command was unnecessary. The lives saved, the patrols thwarted. The enemy slowed. These were the real rewards. By mid-morning, the effects of Merrick's tripwire were undeniable. Reports filtered in from the front lines. Scout cars were moving slower, more cautiously, and fewer artillery strikes were being called in. The soldiers on the ridge noticed it immediately. Morale, which had been frayed after weeks of constant losses, began to recover. Men whispered Marik's name, sharing stories of flipped vehicles and captured crews with a mix of awe and disbelief. Sobel gathered Marik, a few trusted soldiers, to review the situation. "Look at these reports," he said, pointing to maps. "Casualty tallies. Before your first wire, we lost nearly 50 men in 6 weeks. After the tripwires, losses dropped to fewer than a dozen. Enemy reconnaissance is hesitant, tentative. Your method is saving lives. Hundreds, maybe more." Merrick felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. It's pride because his improvised solution had worked. It's apprehension because every success carried risk. If command discovered he had violated doctrine, the consequences could be severe. Yet he reminded himself why he had acted. To prevent more needless deaths like those of Kowalski, Brennan, Vargas, Chen, and Harrison. Their faces haunted him, driving every calculation, every placement of wire, every careful adjustment. Over the next few weeks, the method spread quietly. Soldiers who had seen the results began teaching it to others, passing along tips about optimal wire height, tension, and concealment. By the end of March, nearly half of the squad was using Merrick's tripwires on critical roads, blocking key approaches without anyone outside the unit officially knowing. Each successful deployment reinforced the principle. Ingenuity, resourcefulness, and courage could overcome even the most formidable enemy tactics, the Germans noticed. Lieutenant Richter, who had been tracking reconnaissance losses, began writing reports to his superiors. The patrols were slower, the crews anxious, and morale within his units started to falter. He could not understand why American forces suddenly seemed prepared for every approach. Reports of vehicle rollovers became more frequent, yet no mines. No bazookas, no official anti-tank weaponry had been detected. The uncertainty forced them to operate at half speed, increasing their vulnerability to other Allied actions. Marek watched all of this unfold with quiet satisfaction. The tripwire had become more than a tool, it was a force multiplier. Its flipped scout car disrupted German reconnaissance. Every delayed patrol, reduced artillery strikes, and every captured enemy soldier provided valuable intelligence. The tactical advantage, small at first, began compounding with each deployment. One evening, as Marek cleaned his equipment by the fire, Sobel joined him. "You did what no manual could teach," he said. "You turned necessity into strategy. The unit owes you more than words can capture." Marek shook his head. Recognition from command was irrelevant. He had saved lives, friends. Comrades' end? That was enough. By April, casualty reports confirmed the trend. Losses from reconnaissance. Attacks had dropped dramatically, while patrol effectiveness for the Germans had been significantly reduced. Marek's tripwire method, though unauthorized, had changed the battlefield. The men of his unit now understood the unspoken truth. Innovation often comes from those willing to act in the mud, heading under fire and without expectation of credit. Though command had not officially sanctioned the tripwires, they were allowed to remain in place. Higher-ups likely noticed the drop in casualties, but the story of the rusted shovel was never documented. Marek and his comrades continued using the tactic discreetly, focusing only on saving lives. In the end, success was measured not in medals, but in the lives preserved, in the soldiers able to return home to their families, in the small victories that quietly reshaped the front lines. The tripwire, a simple rusted wire anchored with shovels, had proven more powerful than doctrine, more effective than orders, and more enduring than recognition. It was a lesson in courage, creativity, and the profound impact one determined individual could have amidst the chaos of war. As the weeks passed, consequences of Marek's ingenuity began to ripple beyond the immediate battlefield. While his tripwires remained unofficial, the impact was undeniable. Casualty rates plummeted, patrols slowed, and German reconnaissance had become cautious, hesitant, and unpredictable. Yet, Marek knew that recognition from command would never come. The military valued doctrine over improvisation, and his actions, though life-saving, violated every regulation. Soldiers whispered among themselves about the mysterious flips of scout cars, giving Marek's method a near-mythical status. New recruits were shown the ropes in hushed tones, learning the technique without ever seeing it sanctioned. Each success reinforced the lesson. Sometimes the rules are less important than action, and sometimes one individual's courage can alter the course of countless lives. Marek had become a quiet legend, respected and trusted by his comrades, but invisible in the official record. Back at division headquarters, Colonel Anderson reviewed the reports. He could see the pattern. February had been disastrous, but by April, casualties had dropped dramatically. Reconnaissance vehicle sightings decreased, artillery strikes called by enemy scouts diminished, and overall unit efficiency improved. Yet the source of this change remained classified, a mystery in the reports. Anderson understood the dilemma. Could not officially approve a method that violated field manuals, but he also could not ignore its undeniable success. He filed the documentation, made no orders to stop, and turned a blind eye. Marek continued his quiet work. Each tripwire, each strategic placement along the Italian roads was calculated, precise, and invisible. Enemy soldiers were confused and frustrated, unable to comprehend how such simple measures could produce such effective results. Meanwhile, Marek's comrades grew more confident, relying on ingenuity and creativity rather than waiting for scarce supplies or equipment. They had learned to trust one another and to trust that, sometimes, initiative mattered more than regulations. As May approached and the 34th Infantry, his vision was pulled back for rest and refit. Marek reflected on the months behind him. To soldiers, returned to rear areas, enjoying hot meals, real beds, and respite from constant danger. Yet the knowledge of what they had accomplished lingered. They had saved lives, slowed the enemy, and changed the flow of reconnaissance without ever being officially recognized. For Marek, that was enough. Victory was measured not in medals or commendations, but in the lives of friends who had survived because of his actions. Years later, historians would study the Italian campaign and uncover references to inexplicable reconnaissance losses. Interviews with veterans revealed the secret of the tripwires, though Marek himself remained humble, insisting that he had only done what needed to be done. The method became part of post-war military doctrine, incorporated into training manuals as a legitimate technique for disabling light armored vehicles. Yet Marek's name never appeared. The man behind the innovation remained invisible, quiet testament to the courage and ingenuity of ordinary soldiers in extraordinary circumstances. Marek returned to civilian life in Gary, Indiana, resuming work on the railroads, marrying, and raising a family. He rarely spoke of the war, choosing instead to let the results of his actions speak quietly through the lives that had been spared. Occasionally, old comrades would call, sharing memories of the foggy Italian mornings, the scout cars, and the rusted wire that had saved them. They spoke in whispers, not needing recognition, just the shared understanding of a life saved and a war survived. In the end, the true impact of Marek's tripwire was not recorded in reports or medals, but in the lives of the soldiers it saved. The lessons it taught, and the enduring principle that sometimes the simplest, most courageous actions can alter the course of history. The war moved on, battles were fought, and lives continued, but the legacy of one corporal's daring improvisation remained a quiet, invisible heroism, echoing in the mud, the fog, and the roads of Italy long after the fighting ended. The story of Marek's tripwire was a reminder. In war, innovation often comes not from committees or manuals, but from those willing to risk everything for the lives of others. Trusting by the time Marek returned home, the war was over. But the lessons of those foggy mornings in Italy remained with him. He walked the familiar streets of Gary, Indiana, a city of steel mills and rail yards, yet carried memories that no one outside his unit could ever truly understand. The scout cars, the tripwires, the faces of friends lost and saved, they were etched into his mind, a silent testament to courage under fire. Though his actions had never been officially recognized, Marek knew he had done what mattered most: saved lives. Every flipped scout car, every delayed patrol, every avoided artillery strike was a victory that never appeared in reports or medals. The army might have ignored his ingenuity, but his comrades never did. Sobel, Williams, Jackson, and countless others remembered, and each year on the anniversary of those critical days, they called to share a brief remembrance, honoring the sacrifice, strategy, and daring that had protected them. The tripwire itself became a quiet legend in military circles. Post-war analysis validated Marek's methods, and by 1949, fire obstacles at axle height were officially incorporated into doctrine. Yet the man behind the innovation remained unnamed in manuals, a shadow hero whose courage and creativity saved hundreds. His story is a reminder that sometimes the most significant contributions happen away from the spotlight, in the mud, under the fog. With nothing but instinct, skill, and an unwavering will to protect others. In war, rules, and manuals guide the masses, but it is often the ingenuity of one determined individual that changes the course of events. Marek's rusted shovel and a coil of wire simple, forbidden tool proved that courage and creativity could bend the tide of battle. If you found this story compelling, remember, history is filled with unsung heroes whose quiet bravery shapes the world. Like, subscribe, and comment to keep their stories alive, because sometimes the smallest actions leave the biggest impact. Air skills, their instincts, and their courage in the face of chaos. By the time Marek returned home, the war was over, but the lessons of those foggy mornings in Italy remained with him. He walked the familiar streets of Gary, Indiana, a city of steel mills and rail yards, yet carried memories that no one outside his unit could ever truly understand. The scout cars, the tripwires, the faces of friends lost and saved, they were etched into his mind, a silent testament to courage under fire. Though his actions had never been officially recognized, Marek knew he had done what mattered most, saved lives. Every flipped scout car, every delayed patrol, every avoided artillery strike was a victory that never appeared in reports or medals. The army might have ignored his ingenuity, but his comrades never did. Sobel, Williams, Jackson, and countless others remembered, and each year on the anniversary of those critical days, they called to share a brief remembrance, honoring the sacrifice, strategy, and daring that had protected them. The tripwire itself became a quiet legend in military circles. Post-war analysis validated Marek's methods, and by 1949, wire obstacles at axle height were officially incorporated into doctrine. Yet the man behind the innovation remained unnamed in manuals, a shadow hero whose courage and creativity saved hundreds. His story is a reminder that sometimes the most significant contributions happen away from the spotlight, in the mud, under the fog. With nothing but instinct, skill, and an unwavering will to protect others. In war, rules and manuals guide the masses, but it is often the ingenuity of one determined individual that changes the course of events. Marek's rusted shovel and a coil of wire simple, forbidden tool proved that courage and creativity could bend the tide of battle. If you found this story compelling, remember, history is filled with unsung heroes whose quiet bravery shapes the world. Like, subscribe, and comment to keep their stories alive, because sometimes the smallest actions leave the biggest impact.